change. Because God deserves first place in all of our lives. We should be willing to call on Him in time of need. We should be willing to ask of Him. You know, the Scripture tells us that you have not because you ask not. And when you do ask, you ask amiss. In other words, your asking is empty. It's selfish. It's all about me. And we don't do as Solomon did a lot of times when he was given basically a blank check by God. God said, whatever you want, whatever you desire, just ask. And Solomon asked for wisdom to be able to rule over the people of God. And that was the nation of Israel. And God said, because you have not asked foolishly or covetously, or however you want to say it, for yourself, but you have sought, I'm going to give you what you have asked. And for a long time, Solomon had great wisdom, but Solomon was a man like everybody else, and Solomon had a fall. I mean, he began to fall away from God when he began to be involved in the idolatrous worship of all of those women that he ceremoniously married. Remember, it said he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. You want to know why his kingdom was so peaceful? Because he married the king's daughters of every land around him. They weren't going to attack as long as the king's daughter was there. So there was great peace. I don't think that... I think it was just in ceremony that he was married to all of these women. And I'm not saying that you should seek to go out and marry that many. That's a lot of women to remember birthdays and anniversaries, isn't it? Unless you marry them all on the same day. That's a whole lot. But God gave Solomon wisdom. He asked for it and God gave it. We're told in the book of James that if we'll ask for wisdom, that God will give it to us. But you know, a lot of times, do we really want God's wisdom? That's the key. Do we want it? You see, along with God's wisdom in our lives, in becoming wise in His eyes, not in the world's eyes, there comes responsibility for His Word. And a lot of people don't want that. We live in an age where people want absolutely no responsibility. They want a carefree life. They want everything handed to them. There's a lot of people out there that want to check, but they don't want to work. That's the society that we live in today. And, you know, we as believers should be different from that. We should not be like that. And as we have already discovered in the 6th chapter of the book of Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, the key to the entire thing is to be not as the hypocrites are. And a lot of times, we can be guilty of being a hypocrite in some of the things that we do. We say one thing, but we do the opposite. We're quick to tell other people not to do it, but we ourselves do it. That's a hypocrite. You're real good at telling everybody else how to live their life, but you're not living your life like you should. You know, if we would concern ourselves about making our heart right, it would do a lot of good because it would affect the people around us. When we're right with God, when we're in the right place, then it will affect those around us. And it will make the place around us a little more tolerable. It will make the place where we are, it'll have a little more love and a little more appreciation. But until we get to that point, we can expect nothing but heartache and problems. And I'm not going to tell you that all your heartaches and problems are going to go away just because you get right next to God. There's still going to be some issues in life. But you know what? Those issues aren't going to be as big and insurmountable when we're close to Him. They're going to be a lot easier to handle when we're trusting in God. They're not easy and they're not tolerable when we're not trusting in God. They seem almost impossible. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount says, we're looking at chapter 6 of Matthew, verses 19 through 24. He said, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, or money." That seems to be another key in our society today, is how much money you can get. Money is nice and it's necessary. Just like I had to mention this morning that our finances are a little low and we need to pick those things back up. We need to get back to a place where we're able to meet those needs. And we have needs in our own lives. We have to pay bills. We have to pay rent or make a house payment or do whatever. We have to do those things. And so money is necessary, but we don't worship it. Or we shouldn't. But the world says, get ahead, get all you can, and keep digging and get more. Well, let me tell you, what if you acquire $1 million or $2 million, and all of a sudden, all the hard work, you die? What happens to all that $2 million? Well, your family's going to fuss over it. Who's going to get it? That's what's going to happen. You see, we need to see what the real important things in life are. Yeah, money is good, and there's no reason why we shouldn't lay aside some for a rainy day. That's understandable, but within reason. Not everything you have should go into that rainy day fund. We need to give to God. And you know it's due Him. In Malachi, they said, "Where have we robbed God?" When we don't do what we're supposed to do, we are robbing God of what is due Him. It says in the Old Testament that Abraham, and Abraham was before the law, gave a tenth of all that he had to the Lord. And we heard a little bit about that last week, didn't we? The missionary who spoke to us last Sunday. So where is your treasure? Wherever your treasure is, whatever's most important to you, that's where your heart is. That's where your heart is. There are a lot of people that will give their heart and soul to a lot of projects or a lot of things in this world, but God is a second thought. I don't even think about God that much. My mind and all my concentration, all my energy is on this thing or this thing or this thing. Let me give you an example. A number of years ago, when I was pastoring a certain church, there were a lot of people that were big in the rodeo circuit. Well, there's nothing wrong with rodeos. You know, but every time they stayed out till 3 in the morning on Sunday morning, they could never make it to church. Now, on that same Sunday morning, if you went out before Sunday school, you might see them somewhere. But they couldn't make it to church because they were too tired. But they could get up and go to the store, or they could get up and do a lot of other things. You know what I mean? You're too tired to come to church, but you're not too tired to go to the store or the restaurant or whatever. So, I mean, that's a little hypocritical, isn't it? Really, when you think about it, it is a little hypocritical. I mean, just be honest. I don't want to come to church. I'd rather hear that than somebody just lie to me. Don't tell me I was too tired to go to church, but I got enough energy to do everything else, but I don't have enough energy to come to church. Just tell me you don't want to come. Then we'll figure out why you don't want to come. Just be honest about it. But Have you ever asked people to church and they just swear up and down, I'll be there, and you never see them? I'll tell you another thing is, you ask people to church and they show up and you're not there. That can really be a sticky situation. You invite people to church and then you're not there. So we need to be careful what we do, and we need to mean what we say. In Ecclesiastes chapter 2, the preacher said, I said in mine heart, go to now, I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold of folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. I made me great works, I builded me houses, I planted me vineyards, I made me gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them of all kinds of fruits. I made me pools of water to water therewith the wood that bringeth forth trees. I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. Also I had great possessions of great and small cattle, above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, and the peculiar treasure of kings and of the provinces. I gat me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Remember, this is Solomon. And whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. In other words, he pleasured himself in every way possible, and he gave himself, and nothing was withheld from him. He was king and he had all the wisdom, but he found that he was going to go out and he was going to find what the end was. What's the great thing? And I've often wondered this. What's the great thing about alcohol? I've known alcoholics all my life. And I just can't understand what the joy is in drinking. Yeah, you get drunk, you act like a fool, and you wake up the next morning with the biggest headache you've ever seen. What's the joy in that? What's the joy of putting a needle in your arm and shooting it up? You leave reality for a little while, but you got to come back down. That's when some people just keep pumping it in. You do all of these things. He wanted to see what the end was of this, of all of those that were under the heaven. He wanted to see what was so great about these things. And he said he builded houses and he planted vineyards and he made pools of water and he did all of this. And he marveled at all of the things that he did. But he finally said, I looked on all the works of my hands had wrought and the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit. You know why? Because he was wise. He realized that this wasn't necessarily pleasing to God. He made a big show among men. And a lot of people think that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to do things so everybody else will pat us on the back and tell us how good we are. No, our desire should be to please Him. But a lot of people don't want to hear that. Sometimes we ourselves, we don't want to hear that. Because there's a lot of things I want to do. Sometimes we got to get I out of the way so that God can work. Because I am in the way. And what's right in the middle of sin? I am. S-I-N. I'm right in the middle of it. That's all this old flesh desires to do. That's all this mind desires to do. But what God has born inside of me is battling against that. It says, no, you shouldn't do that. Has your conscience ever kept you from doing something? Or did you say, I'm going to do it anyway? And sometimes you might have got by with it. But then sometimes it's just a disaster, isn't it? What God has born inside of us, and when the Holy Spirit convicts our hearts, we should listen. We should consider carefully before we proceed. Because God knows better what we need to do than we do. That's right. So where's your treasure? Is your treasure laid up like He's here? Was it laid up in all the things that we can acquire? Is it laid up in all the money we can make? Is it laid up in all the pleasures that we can enjoy? When it's all said and done, that goes away. A number of years ago, I was at church camp with my home church. My home church from Gurdon, Arkansas loved volleyball. We even had a volleyball team. We went to church camp this particular year, and I played volleyball with them, and we won. And the victory was great. And I got up that night, I think I was directing music or something, and I got up that night and I said, you know, the victory we won this afternoon is great and wonderful, but it's already fading away. It was great for the moment, but it fades away. So are all the things of the world. They're great for the moment. Is that all you're living for? Is the moment? That's the way a lot of people live their lives. It's however I feel at this moment. I was never so discouraged in the state of Arkansas the other day, and they say they've been doing this for a number of years, but now you can get a gender-neutral ID. They say Arkansas has been doing it for a while. You can go, I guess, to because the man that was speaking was over the Finance Administration, or Department of Finance and Administration, and saying that you can get, and they had old people, young people there lined up to get their gender-neutral identity. That means if I want to be a boy today, I can be a boy, and tomorrow I can be a girl. And it doesn't matter because my ID says that I can be either one. It's really sad, isn't it? It's really sad. We are doing everything we can to take God out of all of His creation. Everything. And the people in Washington are going right along with it. When you vote, vote the way God wants you to vote. Don't vote for who's the most popular or who can put the most money in your pocket, but vote the correct way. However God leads you to vote. And forget about whether they're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. Do what God wants you to do. Find out the information and pray to God, which one should I vote for? And let God lead you. And see if we can't put the right people in the right places that will stand up against some of the things that are going on. So where is your treasure today? You know, I walked through the nursing home in Arkadelphia, Arkansas when they put my grandparents in there. They were only there for about 3 weeks. They both died. And when they were there, I took my grandpa in a wheelchair and I was pushing him around through the halls, and I saw people from my hometown that I had known when I was a teenager that were in the nursing. I couldn't believe this one guy. I couldn't believe he was in the nursing home. I think the reason he was in the nursing home is because he wasn't quite all there up here. He was a good man, but he just wasn't quite there. He was 40 years old and had the mentality of a 6-year-old. Not because he did drugs or anything. It's just because that's the way he was. I don't know what had happened. His brother was normal and his brother took care of him, but I guess it got to a point where his brother couldn't take care of him anymore, so he was in the nursing home. Strong as an ox. He's like Hoss Cartwright. That's about the size he was. But I saw him in the nursing home, and I saw others in the nursing home, and I thought, you know, Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could just walk through the nursing home and just touch people and give them 20 years of their life back? Wouldn't it be wonderful to do that? But is that what God wants me to do? People are living longer now. It's nothing to hear of a 100-year-old person. All the time. What was the other day? A 101? Somebody passed away. I don't know who the oldest person is now, but they're living longer than they have in centuries, basically. They're living longer since the days of Methuselah. Betty, I don't know if you'll live to be 969 years old. Or Mary Ann, you know. But anyway, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to touch these people and give them 20 years of their life back? And you know what some of the older people told me in the nursing home? Said, I wish I had my health back. And I've got all the money. I've got enough money to take care of me until I die. I've got enough money. I've got enough of this. I got enough of that. I wish I had stopped and appreciated my family more. I wish I had my health back. And one old man told me, he said, what good is all the money in the world if you're not healthy enough to enjoy it? True. We expend ourselves to the last ounce of energy we have to make that almighty dollar. But what is that almighty dollar worth? Not much anymore. It takes more and more and more of it to do anything. I never thought I'd live to see the day. I sound like my grandpa. I never thought I'd live to see the day where you have to pay $50,000 for a pretty nice vehicle. I never thought a car would be that expensive unless it was a Lamborghini or some of them foreign jobs or a Corvette or something. But now for just a basic SUV with all of the frills and thrills on it, we're talking $45,000, $50,000. There's a lot of people here that say that's more than I paid for my house. Right? I mean, I don't know. But I've heard it. People said, I spent more on that car than I spent on my house. How sad it is that it has to be that way. But that's the way things are. That's why people need more money. And I've always heard this, that when you acquire your goal, it takes more. When you make more, it takes more. Why? Because you see something else you want. If that's all you're living for. How many people have an old fishing boat? And how many times they get a little more money? Man, I need to get me one of them nice bass boats. And then when they get a bass boat, they want a nicer bass boat. And for long, they've got a $50,000 boat. With payments up to here. If my brother was here, he could witness to you that fact. He called me one day and he said, man, I've got so much money going out. He had a good job, real good job, paid good money. But he had extended himself way too far. And he was asking me, he said, what should I do? And I said, Charles, I said, who signed the dotted line? I could hear his voice. He said, I did. I said, you got nobody to blame but yourself. I said, what I would start doing is trying to sell this stuff for a little bit of down and then take over payments and try to get out from under of some of it. That's what I would do. If you turn it back to the finance company, they're going to mark it down as a repossession, and that's going to go against your credit. I said, be wise about it if you can. If you can't, you may have to do that. I don't know. You got to do what you got to do. But he had way too much, and his wife had just left him and took the 2 kids, and he was looking at having to pay child support for them 2 kids. I don't know if he had to pay any alimony or not. But he was saying, man, I ain't got no money. I barely got anything to live on. And I said, man, it's your life. You're the one that made the decisions. Nobody made them for you. And sometimes that's the way life goes, doesn't it? It's kind of like, do you remember the song Jerry Reed wrote? She got the gold mine and I got the shaft. There's a lot of truth in that, isn't it? Sometimes it's the other way around. But life is never easy. what we've poured our affections into. And I have to say that about my brother. He was looking at eyes with that big camper that he only used maybe once a year. Then it got to where he didn't even use it, but he was still making payments on it. That big old bass ski rig that he bought and was making payments on, he took it out 2 or 3 times, and that was all. He never used it anymore. And I said, "You're still making payments on it." I said, "Get rid of it." But his eye, that's all he saw. "Man, I'm making the money. I can make that payment." You may be able to make that payment, but do you really need it? That's the bottom line. Well, some people are so in love. I worked with a guy that ate, drank, and sleep deer hunting. That's all he ever thought about. He only worked so he would have money to do more. That's the way he lived his life. And I mean, his deer hunting was 365 days a year. He was looking for a better spot. He was out scouting. He was doing something every day that had to do with deer hunting. And he usually filled his tags every year. He was dedicated to deer hunting. That seemed to be the thing that he worshiped. And I thought, man, there's got to be more to life than that. I know some people that are so dedicated to fishing that they'll forsake everything else just to go to the lake one more time. Have the thrill of catching one more big bass. So what's important to you? Where is your heart? Our heart is wherever the things that are most important to us are. A good caution against making the things that are seen, that are temporal, our best things. And if you're just looking for the praise of men, then that's your reward. If the only reason you're doing it is for people to pat you on the back or tell you what a good person you are, you have received your reward and should not expect anything in heaven. You see, that's the way the hypocrites live their lives. It's just for the praise of men. It's just whatever the people want to tell me. It's sort of like, it's almost like the scribes and the Pharisees were like old-time politicians. Let's take a poll of the people. Let's see how popular the high priest is today. Politics and the popularity of an individual to be elected to an office a lot of time relies on polls that are taken by independent organizations that poll people and say, "What do you think? What do you think about Donald Trump? What do you think about Nancy Pelosi? What do you think about, what's her name up in Alaska that ran for president? Sarah Palin. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about this issue? What do you think about that issue?" But whether we're doing the right thing does not depend on what everybody else says. It depends on what God thinks. Is that all we're trying to do, is please men? Or are we trying to please God? You say, "Well, I can do both." Really? You can do both? It's funny how he says here that you can't serve God and mammon. You can't serve God and all those other things. You know what a lot of people find out? When they give themselves to God, that some of those things that they really wanted and desired, God gives it to them anyway. So why not serve God? You never know. He may give it to you. No, I want to sweat and labor for it. I want, really? If somebody come and handed you the keys to a brand new vehicle, would you refuse it? I might refuse it because I might not be able to pay the sales tax on it. That's another stinking thing in Arkansas. You go look at a new vehicle, even used vehicles, you got to pay sales tax on them again. You got to pay sales tax on them. And you know what? The sales tax is higher in Arkansas than it is almost anywhere else. Didn't used to be that way. You can go over to Oklahoma, it's hardly anything at all, but I don't live in Oklahoma. I live in Arkansas. So if somebody says you can go out here to Joe's Clean Used Cars, you just make a down payment and you start making payments. Well, yeah, that's great. But what about the sales tax to get your license to put on the thing? That's another thing. It may be $2,000, $2,500 on some of those vehicles just to get the sales tax paid. It's sad, but that's the way it is. What's more important to you? Having a good, reliable, older vehicle or a brand spanking new one so everybody can ooh and ah at you. Boy, you got a pretty car. You know, when most people get fed up with their automobile and trade it off, they've probably fixed everything on it. Somebody else, doesn't it drive you crazy when somebody else buys it and keeps driving it forever? That thing was breaking down on me every other week. Well, by the time you get fed up with it, you fixed everything on it. You could have been the one driving it. Do you really need a new car? Do you really need a new bass boat? Do you really need a new house? Do you really need... What do we worship? Do we worship God or not? Lay up not for yourselves treasures upon the earth. Have you ever seen something that was moth-eaten? You ever heard of something called mothballs? You ever smelled them? They don't smell too pleasing. By the way, it's a good way to get rid of snakes around your house. If you go get snake away, the stuff that you sprinkle around your house, it's nothing but crushed up mothballs. That's all it is. It's useful for a lot of things, but people I can remember my grandma. Oh, when it come time to put all them summer clothes up, she had one of them big bags that you hang in a closet that's zipped up, and you put mothballs in the bottom of it. And that keeps the moths from getting in there during the winter months and eating your clothes up. You could also have a cedar-lined closet. That helped a whole lot too. If you had a cedar-lined closet or you had a cedar chest, you wonder why people always had cedar chests. They put their quilts and blankets and stuff in there at the foot of the bed or whatever. When it got, summertime, they put all those things in there and put mothballs in there and kept the moths from eating them up. Moths used to be a real problem. They don't seem to be that much of a problem anymore because most people live in an airtight house. So many people have allergies, they don't open their doors and let the screen be between them and the outside. They don't open their windows. My grandmother would drive her crazy. I got to have my windows open. That's what she always said. People don't live like that anymore. Where there's a hole in the screen, the moth gets in, then it's, oh man, it eats everything. But it's very correct. We're laying up for ourselves treasures on heaven. You ever had anything that was real, that you really liked and you forgot about it and it rusted on you? You ever leave something outside? That's a good way to get it to rust. Leave it outside. A metal thing. Leave it outside. You ever went to use a shovel and the whole thing break in half because you left it outside and so long that it just rusted? Most of the time the wooden handle breaks before it rusts completely into. But things don't last, do they? They don't last. They're temporary. So is everything in this world. You can't take it with you. I've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul. I remember a story about a bunch of people that were walking by and dropping money in the casket. And the last man that walked by, he gathered all that cash up out of that casket. He counted it and he wrote a check for it and dropped it in there. He said, now I'm going to tell you, he said, if that check goes through my bank, then I'll believe that you can take it with you. That check wasn't going through the bank. It was going to rot there with everything else. So was all that money that people were throwing in there. But people trust in the almighty dollar. They trust in all the things that we can have. How many of you have to have the newest gadget? How many of you have to have the newest thing? It took me till February of this year to give up my flip phone for a smartphone. And it was Josiah's old one that had been sitting for about a year. I didn't even know if it would work or not. But I took all of the OtterBox off of it and looked at it. It was like a brand new phone. I took it to Verizon and they said, you're good. We'll just change the service over, and this is how much it'll be. He said, you don't have to pay any upgrade. You don't have to pay anything because you've already got the device. I said, great. Great. But I never thought that I would be able to function with a smartphone. I thought you had to be smart, but it just proves you can be a dummy and use a smartphone. I'm living proof. I'm living proof. Now, I may not be able to do everything that younger people can do with it, but I can do what it has on it. And what it has on it is enough for me. Josiah even showed me how that you can filter the camera and you can take pictures in black and white. And I thought that was really neat. He said, I never knew that either, but I was just fiddling around with it one day and tried it, and you can. There's a thing on there where you can just click it down and you can take black and white pictures. It's neat. That's a lot of things. Camera sales have gone down since cameras on phones work so good now. But it's amazing. But do people worship technology? Do people worship technology? I think so. I've asked Josiah, I said, what would your generation do if all this modern technology just one day went kaput? He said, I don't know, Dad. I said, well, I can tell you that there was life before it was. And we survived putting dimes in a payphone to make phone calls. And we survived the rotary phone. And some people can even go back further to the old phone up here that you held the earpiece up here with. And we survived party lines. We survived a lot of things, but some people worship. They've got to have the newest technology, the cutting edge. Boy, they know how to sell stuff, don't they? This is the cutting edge. It's like we've taken the Jetsons and we're trying to make it all now. Have you noticed it? Hovering vehicles, they exist. They're out of reach financially to most people, but they make them. They're already here. It's like we've taken all the cartoons and all the sci-fi stuff and we've now made it reality. So what do you worship? That's the question. Do you worship God or do you worship things? You can't worship both. Because you'll either love God and hate the things, or you'll love the things and hate God. You say, well, on Sunday I can love God, and on Monday I can love the things. That's being a hypocrite. You see, because God, when we love God, He wants us to love Him every day. Not just on Sunday. Some people think that's all church and religion is. You put it on like you put on a suit of clothes to come to church. And you go home, you take that clothes off, and then you can just be whatever you want to be. That's a hypocrite.